everybody, to Crossing the Line, where each week we dig into the latest news on the economy, housing, and whatever else Hannah wants to talk about. Because she is the star of this show, as we know. Today is December 18th, a very, very wet day here in the tri-state area. And what, not a shock, the Jets are eliminated from the playoffs. The only question is when, not if.
Hip, hip, hooray.
And this is our 7th and unfortunately last episode of the year.
Yes.
Obviously we film on Monday and we have Christmas and New Year's coming up. I'm Greg Heym, Chief Economist here at Brown Harris Stevens and author of The Line, a weekly economics blog, joined with, as always, with my co-pilot Hannah, and we have Lean and Ray. And this week we have our first guest, and we just go big right from the beginning, get the biggest guy that we can get in here. And that is correct. It is my good buddy, Vince Rocco. Welcome, Vince.
Welcome.
Vince is a man of many talents. He hosts the #1 rated real estate podcast in the U.S., Talking Real Estate with Vince Rocco. Don't worry, we promise not to catch your ratings for at least another couple episodes.
Please do.
He's also a senior real estate advisor and certified real estate instructor. So we're very happy to have him. The question that we'll answer, hopefully during the show, is this just shameless cross-promotion or the perfect pairing of two media giants?
Talent.
I'm going to go with that one.
Talent.
You know, we are the core of the Moore network. See, that rhymes. It's kind of like Seinfeld and Friends or
Yes.
you know, a lot of the other primetime back-to-back shows.
Core of More. I'm going to remember that. That's
Core of
helpful.
More.
Must-see TV.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or we'll find you. You know, we're here in our studio, 1873, or as I call it, Vince Rocco Studios. And we're always trying to be informative, concise, entertaining, and edgy all at the same time. We haven't done it yet, so why start now? Remember, too, that we have an email address. If you'd like to send feedback, we love to hear from our listeners and those of you watching on YouTube. It's ctl@bhsusa.com. So, Vince, we have a lot in common. We're podcast legends, big celebrities, and unfortunately, rabid Jet fans.
Well, because it's Monday morning, and you say it's edgy, right? Or
Yes.
Are we edgy this morning about the Jets? I mean, fortunately, they were eliminated from the playoffs, and I say that, love the Jets, but I say that because they don't deserve to be there this year. I know it's difficult, but they really don't.
No, and it's 13 years now, which is the longest drought in professional sports, at least here in North America.
Somebody has to hold that statistic.
And
Right.
well,
That's true.
I'm the keeper of these things too.
You are.
But it really boils down to their offense. My son texted me. Of course, he should have been paying attention in school and not texting me. But these kids, these Gen Zers, right, Hannah?
So typical of just these kids.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like you're
Exactly.
going to shake your fist when you say
Once
that.
you hit
Do we
50,
show our age when we do things like that or say things
You
like
don't.
that? Well, okay.
Once you hit 50, you're allowed to go. I'm allowed to yell at kids, get off my lawn, and do all those unfun things.
I thought it was wisdom. Now it's about these kids.
Yeah, you'd think, but
Depends.
Okay.
best neighbor ever right here, Greg.
You know what? Show you what a great neighbor. Last night, my music teachers were showcasing their students, and I accompanied my next door neighbor's daughter, as I do every year, on It's the Most Wonderful Time of the Year. And I actually played the right notes, so that was good. And I also accompanied my wife.
Nice.
But getting back to the Jets and what my son sent me, we saw how pathetic their offense is. They didn't score. But in the 13 years they haven't made the playoffs, only once were they a top 10 offense. And they were 10th the year that Fitzmagic came to town and threw all those touchdown passes. But you take the other 12 years, we've never been higher than 22nd in offense. So we can't score at all. We have a great defense that I think gave up yesterday.
They stayed home yesterday.
A
completely.
quarterback that got hurt the fourth snap he took, and a backup that we've completely ruined now, no matter what we do with Zach. So
Well, all I say about Zach, I'm a Zach Wilson fan. Hello, everybody out there. But we have maybe ruined him for future recruitment to other teams. I really do hope, though, that the Jets release him from his contract so he can go find a home where he can showcase his talents
And we
and
don't
do what he needs to do.
we don't even have the coolest quarterback in New York anymore.
No, we don't.
Although Tommy Cutlets took it on the chin
I
yesterday.
just can't with that name, Tommy Cutlets.
Look,
Yeah.
we're paisans.
Where is he from? Where is he from?
Is he from Jersey?
It sounds
and
like
does he
it.
still live with his parents?
I think
Yeah.
he's from New Jersey.
He's got to be.
Well, with a nickname like Tommy Cutlets or the passing paisano, that's another one I heard.
I just feel like I want to bread veal cutlets every time I hear that name.
I'm hungry.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I'm hungry always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's get on with the part I get paid for, which is the economics. Last week we challenged Hannah to come up with a name for a segment of the show, and she did a wonderful job giving us the lineup. And I was sending an email yesterday about how we would start with the line, which is the name of the blog, items, and I go, line items. Okay, so I've now named a part of the show.
It is an excellent, excellent name.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. We got to stick together, right?
Yes.
As long as that word line is in there, right?
It's
he's
cohesive.
happy.
It
We are
works.
abusing
It
the
works.
term so much.
That's okay.
If we ever have music here, we're going to have to play like Hold the Line, stuff like the Dragging the Line, One Toke Over. No, we can't do that song.
No, you
but-
can't do that song.
Drawing a line.
Is that a song? Draw the Line. Draw the Line, Aerosmith, yes.
Talking about abusing, I'm abusing my hair with these headsets today, but only for you guys. I'm
Well,
only doing
me
it
and
for
Ray can take care of that. You can meet our barbers and get our haircuts, and then it's not a problem.
you. Okay. Bad head hair.
All right, so let's go sort of chronologically. What was the first line item of the blog this week?
Well, before I get into that, I would just like to say that the headline was strong. So the Fed does nothing, and we couldn't be happier.
Yes, I'm doing good with headlines lately. You get a little loopy writing these things, especially like with inflation over the last couple of years. How many headlines can you come up to describe inflation?
It's a good point.
Yeah, the Fed does it. So in a move that surprised nobody, they didn't do anything for the third straight meeting, and they left rates unchanged. So what you really need to take away from this is a couple of things that you probably already have heard somewhere, but you haven't heard me say it, so that's why you need it. You don't have it.
Exactly. Right.
They're done hiking rates. That's it. The cycle is over. We'll all celebrate that later. They are planning for rate cuts in the next 3 years. 3 rate cuts next year, 4 in 2025, and 3 in 2026. But a couple of Fed officials came out later in the week and said, stop nagging us about when we're going to start cutting. It's almost like that child that just keeps saying, I want my rate cuts, I want my rate cuts. They don't expect a recession next year. Every couple of meetings, they release their updated economic projections, and they don't expect a recession to come. It's funny because the Fed and a lot of these government agencies never seem to forecast a recession. Like it's never going to be bad. Even real estate companies know when bad times are coming and admit it, but apparently the Fed, a bunch of economists are being overly optimistic, Vince. Is that possible?
Well, everybody was talking for the last year and a half that we actually are in or were in a recession, but the powers to be, the Fed, say we're not. And now they're saying we're not going to be in a defined recession next year. So, it's all...
Just be careful if they put their hand up, because they might be using the Jedi mind trick when they go, there is no recession.
And we
These
can
aren't the droids you're looking for.
appreciate how people can change their mind sometime, right?
Right,
Who knows what tomorrow brings? I don't know.
That is true. Like we were hopeful about the Jets, and now there is no hope. One thing to remember to all you home buyers out there or real estate professionals, there's no direct relationship when the Fed, remember, they're touching something called the federal funds rate. It's not really important anymore, but it's an overnight rate. Banks charge each other for loans to meet deposit requirements. It's really the gas pedal of the brake on the economy. It's not directly related to long-term rates. In fact, they can move in opposite directions. So just be aware of that. And while mortgage rates, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, have been coming down, and that's great, this doesn't mean, even when the rate cuts start, that's not necessarily going to accelerate further declines in mortgage rates. Could happen. And of course, the stock market absolutely loved what the Fed said. That's why we couldn't be happier. So happy it hurts. new Bryan Adams album
Yes.
tour.
There
I
you
grew
go.
up in the '80s. I'm not shy to
I
admit.
you go.
love
Reckless,
Bryan
one of my
Adams.
He's great.
Canadia's one of Canada's best exports. So the Dow hit an all-time high. Stocks had a great week, and we're all smiling here on a very rainy Monday morning, and that's good news. And then, just a day later, we get the next bit of news.
Right. Inflation is up from 3.1% from a year ago.
Right. So last week we got what I call the PI brothers, CPI, which is like the big brother, the one everybody pays attention to. PPI is the little brother, sort of the one that doesn't get any respect.
Are you the older brother or the younger brother again?
I have two older brothers and one younger brother. I am the shortest of the bunch, though.
Somehow I thought you were in the middle.
Well, with
You're
four, you can't, but
Okay.
I'm the shortest one out of them.
I know one of his brothers. He's very cool.
Is he?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's told you that time and time again. He's really cool. So my brother uses that line all the time, so it's good to throw it back at him. So consumer price index, which gets all the love in the media, was only up 0.1% last month and 3.1% higher than a year ago. That's great news, but one of the reasons the increase wasn't higher was a 2.3% decline in energy prices. And that's why we're always looking at core data. Core, when we're talking about price data, excludes food and energy. Mm-hmm. You want to get volatile prices out because you can have a huge jump in food or energy prices because of weather issues, wars, stuff like that, which, not wars, but other things can be very temporary. And again, all this data was pretty close to expectations, which is why the market really liked it. So core CPI, which again is not looking at the food and energy prices, was up a little bit higher, 0.3% last month and 4% year over year. And the reason core inflation is taking longer to come down, again, is because the energy prices aren't in it, but it's housing. Housing is the biggest component of core inflation. And housing prices are up 6.5% year over year. Now, remember, and those of you listening who are New York real estate brokers know that here in New York City, we can't value co-ops and condos using sale prices. We have to use rental comps. Well, for consumer price index purposes, they don't look at sales prices to get housing inflation. They look at rental prices. And the logic is that your home can go up in value, but you're still spending the same on it. Your mortgage payment doesn't change because your home goes up in value. So they look at rents. Now this data can lag because they basically do it in 6-month intervals. But, at the end of the day, this is all good news, although whether you look at the headline number at 3.1, the core number at 4%, or, the cooler older cousin, core PCE that we talked about a couple of episodes ago, that's running kind of in the middle of those two numbers, and that's the one that gets all the love from the Fed. So that's the important one. And yes, Vince, I was the one that got all the love from my parents because I was the best child.
I don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Now let's get something closer to Vince's heart.
Yes, mortgage rates. They fell from 7%.
They're below 7% for the first time since August. How come I haven't heard about the party at your place?
Well, listen, when it comes to mortgage rates, okay, so for the past year and a half, we've seen a tremendous increase from, in some cases 3%, 3.5%, 4%, 4.2% to almost 8% in a very short window of time, say a year and a half. That kind of scares the hell out of people, buyers, for example. It scares the hell out of sellers who want to sell because they need a larger space, a smaller space, and they think, well, how am I going to sell something at 3 or 4% interest and then go buy something else, regardless of purchase price, and double my payments because of interest rates? Buyers feel the same way. So I think until we see rates under 6 and stay under 6% consistently, the news this past week was amazing. These numbers are great. But I think for the consumer out there, on the housing side, when they see rates stay at 6% or less, 5.5 would be great, for a consistent period of time, then you're going to see the housing market, I believe, take off. One of the things I've said through the years, pre-COVID, during COVID, post-COVID, is you cannot keep New Yorkers down for very long. I mean,
Except the Jets and the other sports teams,
the
you can
Jets,
keep them down.
The Jets, I mean, that's a whole,
Plus, they play in
that's
Jersey,
different.
and Jersey's, cursed.
Well, thank you. The Jets are another whole conversation, and we'll get to that in a minute. But you can't keep New Yorkers down. They have to buy. They want to buy. They need to buy. They want to buy a piece of that rock and feel like, Mom and Dad said you have to own something to, advance yourself in life.
Right.
So they wait and they wait and they wait. And so what they've been doing the past year and a half is waiting. So come what next year, get past the holidays, rates stay the same, rates start coming down, rates stay under 6%. I don't want to use the word avalanche, but I think similar to what we saw in the end of 21 into the early part of 2022, you're going to see a lot of consumers, a lot of buyers out there purchasing because the rates are accommodating and they make sense. They no longer will scare them.
Well, the pent-up demand is there because the jobs numbers have been great. Hiring is still much stronger than anybody expected at this point. So people want to buy homes, need to buy homes. But yeah, the biggest problem has been inventory in most parts of the country or lack thereof. And as you mentioned, rates are a big part of that because who wants to trade in their 3% mortgage for, a 7.5% mortgage?
They're not doing that. I have many, many sellers sitting on the fence at the moment who say to me, when things level off, and I love that term, I need to sell, I want to sell, I have to sell, whatever, and move on. But they're not doing that now because they don't want to double.
Well, level off means
there.
where they get where I want them. That's probably what they're kind of saying.
Everybody has their own definition of level off, and I'm sure my sellers do too.
You might be a little optimistic. I think a lot of people are expecting rates to get in the low sixes by the end of next year. Could we get below 6? Sure. I mean, we've certainly seen. This is in under 2 months, almost a full % decline because remember, we were at a 23-year high in the middle of October.
Right.
So we've seen that rates can go up and down very quickly. The economic data is in the right direction. It's giving us the framework for that. But, and the other thing, if you're a buyer right now and you really have to do something, because life happens, let's face it, the vast majority of buyers out there are buying because they need to do it. And that's typically the case. This idea that investment buyers buy up so much of real estate is not true. It's a nice headline. But lower rates are really the only way to save money right now in this environment in most parts of the U.S., right?
Yeah, and one of the things that we've tried to do in the last year and a half is to tell buyers that even if you're paying a higher interest rate right now, that doesn't mean that going forward when things do change and rates do come down, you can refinance and get a much lower rate. I mean, I tell the story on my show all the time where, my first purchase of real estate X amount of years ago was at 12% or 13% interest. And at the time, that was a damn good rate, according to my father, because rates were at 16, 17, and 19%. Okay?
And as anybody can tell you, one of the reasons that didn't bother you was because the savings rates were high. Like people forget that you can get a 5% CD these days for a year. So the spread between the savings and the borrowing rates is actually narrowing. Remember, when mortgage rates were 3%, you were getting like 0.25% on your savings. Like you were getting nothing on it. So you gotta understand, and that's true, that you can refinance, but also understand 6.95% was the average rate. And again, to my good friends,
30-year fixed, right?
Right, conforming to my good friend Steve Kligerman. Yes, I'm not going to quote all the rates that people can get, but they should reach out to the lender and find out because jumbo rates, ARMs are all out there. But at 6.9%, 95%, that is almost a full % lower than the average 30-year conforming rate over the last half century. So when we talked about this, one of the early shows, that a lot of people think 5.5% is the historical, average for rates. No, it's just under 8%. So it stinks because for the last couple of decades we've been in this great low interest environment. But These rates are sitting right now just slightly above where they were in 2007 before the financial crisis when I bought my house.
Correct.
I was getting 6.5%, and I was very happy. Now, being an economist, I've refinanced a bunch of times. Like a lot of people, you don't have to be an economist to know it's time to refinance when the rates are half what you were getting. But things are moving in the right direction. The economy is slowing. It still looks pretty good, but you can even go back to the inflation article. On a national level, we expect home prices to start to, or at least the way they're calculated in the CPI data, to start to decline because rents are declining in the U.S. They're still very high in a lot of places. There's no question. And it's a relative term. It's like inflation. When we say inflation is coming down, that doesn't mean prices are coming down. That means they're not rising as fast as they used to. So if house prices do start to come down, that'll also, the affordability is something that everybody has to watch. And we're going to talk about this in a couple of minutes. All you keep hearing is that houses have never been this unaffordable before. But that's depressing. So who wants to talk about that? But we have one more item on the line items.
Yes,
for the
we
week.
do. It's in a different direction here, but it's about retail sales, and they rose in November.
Right. So retail sales are important because we all know, right, from Hannah's taking all those economics classes in college, that consumer spending is roughly 2/3 to 70% of GDP. So economic growth is really dependent on us spending money, and me and Vince try to spend all the money we can, betting against the Jets. But it was up 0.3% last month, and you go, big deal, Greg. Well, it was thought to decline. The forecasts were looking for a decline, and the reason is the excess savings that people had during the pandemic is gone. There's $1 trillion in credit card debt out there. That's a record. The rates people are paying on credit card debt is a record. Student loan payments restarted. And, it's surprising how resilient, and retail sales and GDP have been much better than forecast this year. If you're wondering where people are spending their money, the biggest increase last month was at restaurants and bars because we all have to, eat and drink, right?
Right.
Maybe not
That's
in that order.
essential, I
The
think.
order can change
Right.
as drink and eat, but drink and drink. And, we talked about the decline in gas prices. Well, that brought sales down at gas stations because their prices went down. So it's good, and we nobody wants the economy to go in recession. I joked last week, Vince, that it's kind of like rooting for the Jets to lose out so they get a better draft pick. We don't necessarily want a recession. It looks like that soft landing is just right there. We can see it. We can reach out. We can touch it. And that's music to our ears. So are we happier yet, Vince, or what?
Well, listen, I laughed out loud when I read your report the other day where you say that
Was there anything funny in that report?
Well, no, more consumers.
Rarely.
Consumers are spending more money in restaurants and bars. I mean, I go home at night. I live in Manhattan, and if I'm in a taxi and I'm driving up one of the avenues, and all these outside places, or you can even see inside some of the restaurants, they are packed. Absolutely packed with people. So consumer spending is amazing, but what I was disappointed in hearing is the debt up to $1 trillion in credit cards. I mean, so maybe this goes back to what I said earlier about you can't keep New Yorkers down. I mean, I'm making this a New York thing, not necessarily a U.S. thing, but you can't keep people down in New York. They want to spend, they want to buy, they want to live their life. So they're going to try and do that, in some cases, maybe living on the edge.
Yeah.
Well, I think,
and
too,
spending more than they should be spending.
Yeah.
We talked about, and we saw this in housing, the U.S. had a housing boom only 2-3 months after COVID.
Right.
We saw it in 21 into 22.
Right.
And, we were hit harder by COVID. So, yeah, people in the city, it's still not crowded really at lunch in restaurants because there's still not enough people back at work. But when I do eat dinner in the city, which I'll be doing Friday, taking my son.
Where will you be going?
We're going to the Ranger game, Rangers Oilers. We're gonna, hopefully Igor can stop McDavid.
You should get a $1 slice of pizza.
He's so dedicated.
No.
Well, in that neighborhood, what kind of food are you going to eat?
Well, we'll be going to my favorite restaurant, which is Canaletto, right here on the Upper East Side.
Yes.
Great food there, and my son's always excited to go there. So it's always special to go to hockey games with him because we share that. And me and Hannah share a love of the Rangers.
I'm a Rangers fan.
Because they're better than the
I'm not
Devils.
into hockey. The Jets have consumed all of my patience this year, so
That's
I
all right.
can't.
Well, on
Thank
that
God
note,
for the Buffalo Bills.
one more thing about retail sales, because it's the teacher in me, I guess. Remember that they're not adjusted for inflation. So sometimes retail sales can go up just because the prices are going up. People buying the same things, but paying more for them. So just keep that in mind. Sorry, it's a little nerdy, but it's in my contract. I have to make people yawn at least 3 or 4 times.
I haven't yawned yet, so.
Well, it's because we loaded you up with coffee beforehand. Ray is asleep. No, Ray is doing a wonderful job.
Yeah, he is.
All right, so now
Now for the
since you
lineup.
named this segment, yes. Now we're going to have a vote. Please let us know which is better, the lineup or. Now remember, the lineup was
Everything
taken.
is a competition to you.
Well, everything is about betting and gambling, and today. So why not? We'll see what the FanDuel line is.
He's always
on
trying hard because of the team he roots for that doesn't win
That
at
is
all.
a great point.
It's
Vince.
all about the Rangers, though. We're all in on it. Once Igor gets going, that's going to be it. There's nothing to stop us. I mean, Panarin, we should all cut our hair, although me and Ray don't have to. But everybody should cut their hair because he's been phenomenal since he got rid of those curls. Trocheck looks great. Fox is back. They are Zibanejad actually went to defend his teammate, was going to fight somebody the other night. And plus, they beat the Bruins on Saturday in overtime. Does anything put a smile on your face more than
Morale is high.
when a New York team beats a Boston team? Nothing's better.
No,
than
I
that.
agree. I totally agree.
Maybe we beat the Islanders, but that we just been beating the Islanders a lot the last
Well,
couple
the
of years.
Islanders,
Yeah.
You know what it was like growing up in Long Island in the 80s being a Ranger fan? It was not easy. It still
No.
scars me.
No.
All right, let's start
Well-
the
So
lineup.
that's the answer.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
okay. Lot of
that
scars.
I wouldn't say that was a negative note, but we're not really starting out positive here because the math for buying a home no longer works.
Okay, so this is something I've ranted about for a while. Now we all
You
know
rant?
that yes, by many measures, housing is has never been this unaffordable. If you look at incomes, you look at the prices and how they've gone up. But one of the things that always just ticked me off is there's this thing about a buy versus rent ratio, right? And this article, by the way, was in the Wall Street Journal, and they basically show a bunch of charts explaining why there's never been a worse time to buy a home. But this whole idea of a ratio, basically, where you take the price of buying and divide that by the annual rent, right? If that number is less than 15, then you buy. If it's over 15, you rent. So the $1 million house, $100,000 in rent, it's 10, you buy, right? So now you've been a real estate agent for how many years?
21.
Okay. Now, how many times has somebody asked you to calculate that ratio? How many times have you actually presented that ratio to somebody?
In all honesty, not that often. I tend to not want to deal with that conversation of buy versus rent because I think they're two separate situations. There are people who can afford to buy, and sometimes they really don't want to, but they can afford to. And there are others who don't have enough down payment money, don't have enough liquid assets after closing, so they can't buy. The problem we've had in the last couple of years, last year and a half, is that the rents in New York City have almost doubled. I mean, when you look at a typical one-bedroom apartment in this town, close to $6,000.
It's incredible.
It's incredible. It's insane. So when you look at those numbers, you say to your buyers or renters, maybe you should buy because your outlay is going to be probably close, if not the same. But the problem,
Plus more predictable.
it's correct. It's more predictable. But the problem that buyers have right now, and again, some of them are being forced to continue to stay renting because, as you said, Greg, before, housing has never been as unaffordable as it is these days. The reasons for that are in New York City, common charges or maintenance
Right.
are insanely high. And when you're looking at maintenance,
And
for
for
example,
those of you with common charges in a co-op, maintenance in a
Right.
co-op include the property taxes. So that's is a big part of it. Property taxes here again, for apartments are based on rents, which have been going up. And the other thing, too, just to mention, is that New York is really the only place that has this with any real impact. We still have rent stabilization here, which it takes half the apartments off out of the reach of all of us because people never leave them.
Right.
And another thing that comes up, we talked about this with the commercial market last week. Remember, CoStar was saying that we may have a shortage of office space, is because when you have recessions or situations of turmoil and uncertainty and dramatic changes, construction stops. Yeah. Because nobody, if you're going into a recession or who's going to build? Yeah. And then when you have this boom, like we did after COVID, all of a sudden there's not enough homes for sale, for sure. There's not enough homes for rent. So multifamily development has sort of been perking up a bit, but it's always behind the curve, which puts people in this tough situation where neither choice seems anywhere near as appealing as it used to.
Well, exactly correct. And again, buyers are kind of on the fence with, can I afford the outlay each month because of the common charges or maintenance, because of the real estate taxes? I mean, I'm talking to buildings, all the time. And in fact, one of the buildings I sell in all the time, they're going to be given each of the homeowners a 7% increase in their common charges every month, which is maintenance in a condo. 7% is a big number. So anybody coming in looking to buy in that building, I've heard 10% in some cases. I've heard 5%. The average right now in my world seems to be anywhere between a 6 and an 8% increase in maintenance every month. Then if it's a condo, as you said, you're tacking on the real estate taxes, which are insane. I sold 2 years ago on the Upper East Side a brand new development building where a standard typical 2-bedroom apartment, 1,250, 1,300 square feet, which is not that big. And the annual real estate taxes for that apartment were $32,000 a year. I mean, my brother's got a 7,000 square foot house in Westchester. He probably pays that. So, when you're looking at your monthly outlay, you're kind of stopped in your tracks with, whoa, that's a lot of money per month.
But you make a good point there, your monthly outlay. So
your
again,
monthly outlay.
The title of this article is "The Math for Buying a Home No Longer Works." No. These charts show why. But the only math that should matter to somebody thinking about buying a home is whether or not they can afford the home they want or find the home they can afford. Ratios, look, we all know rates, more than doubled. We all know that the price of homes in most parts of the U.S. is still going up because of low inventory. Again, I think that's going to change this upcoming year. So we know that for people, affordability is an issue. Mm-hmm. But remember, and you said this, you can refinance. It's always a stretch. When I bought my home, in 2006, you're always concerned. Like, can I afford this? You work with your mortgage professional, whoever you work with, and they'll help you understand. One of the things I did, which I read somewhere, I wish I could remember where it was, we were renting in Long Island, and what I did was say, okay, if we want to buy a house for this amount, this is what we're going to need each month. So let's, for 6 months, on top of our rent, take the difference that the increase in the buying is going to cost us and put it in a savings account and not touch it. And if we can do that for 6 months, then we'll feel comfortable that we can afford this house. And remember, we still have a pretty good labor market. People's prospects for wage growth is slowing, but that's not a bad thing for the economy because that helps get inflation down a bit. Mm-hmm. But wages are still growing. There's still almost 9 million jobs out there. Mm-hmm. And look, we're a growing nation. People do need to make decisions eventually. And I think that 24 will be a much better year for home buying and for real estate agents because there'll be more activity. There'll be more inventory. All of a sudden that spread between the mortgage I have and the mortgage I'll have to take is going to narrow to the point where people say, you know what, I really want to trade up or down. I really want to move to another location.
What's really going to, speed up the housing buying power next year is inventory. Right now, we do not have inventory. We're severely lacking in inventory. Again, because sellers don't want to sell, they can't sell, they don't know where they're going to go with their next move because of interest rates and purchase prices. everybody thinks that the purchase prices are going to come down significantly. Everybody thinks that, the market's going to crash. In 21 years that I'm in this business, I've heard that consistently. Oh, prices are coming down. Prices are coming down. Prices have to come down. They don't come down in New York City. They adjust. They correct. Right. When you have more inventory, it's always a supply and demand situation.
Well, remember, people said after the financial crisis that people weren't going to view homes the same way again.
Right.
And to be honest, you hear about Gen Zers and even millennials don't put as much importance on owning a home as prior generations did,
I was bring that up.
As a path to wealth.
Yep.
And look, everybody, like you said, everybody has to make the decision that's best for them. Is home buying right for me? Am I going to stay in this area? Is my job going to force me to relocate? Do I have to start to go into the office now? Because a lot more people are being told that, and that leads to decisions. And
that also stopped a lot of purchasing because people were not necessarily needing to be in New York City for the long period of time. They can commute from home. They could work from home, and they didn't have to be here.
Well, think about this. People that graduated college like almost 3 years ago haven't been in an office.
Correct.
And that's Hannah's going, no, but it's
like
true
it
when you
here.
think about it. No, I like it.
I do too.
For those of us that can remember pre-pandemic life, it seems like the pandemic's been going on for decades, not years. You do miss the collaboration, and look, there are technologies that make that easier, but people's opinions do change. But at the end of the day, over 60% of Americans still own a home.
Correct.
And it's an important part of building wealth. But again, it's that you can't give blanket advice like you should always buy a home, you should always rent.
True.
I think we're like Sith Lords, Ray. We're talking in absolutes all the time. One of the Phantom Menace or something like that is. There's no absolutes.
That's the second Star Wars reference today.
What can I say?
You just never know what's going to happen here.
It's so true.
Maybe I'll have to
Even
replace
when you're
Alfred
in his office
Newman.
chatting with him, it's always something that's pulled out of the air.
We're getting rid of Alfred Newman. We have Darth Vader for next year.
For sure.
But correct me if I'm wrong, though. I think I read something a while ago where millennials. Your point was very well said.
See, that's why I have you on. Talent sticks together, doesn't it, buddy?
But you were correct. And millennials really didn't find, the reason to buy. They wanted to spend money in the bars and the restaurants and clubs and travel and this and that and the other thing. Then all of a sudden they got smart and said, you know what? Maybe things are changing. Maybe I'm getting older. Oh boy, isn't that something? So now they want to start investing. But where are they investing? Now again, I can talk from New York City because I'm a New York City real estate agent.
Go for it.
They're investing all over the place, but not necessarily in New York City because they're finding more affordable housing in the suburbs or even in other states. So they're buying, but they're not necessarily buying here.
Well, a lot of the affordability is not just about your home purchasing and carrying costs.
Correct.
It's about the state you live in,
Correct.
what their taxation,
Absolutely.
How that works, and things like that. And
Your overall cost of living per
it's
month.
not just. The home is the biggest part of it, and you hear some frightening statistics on what percentage of people's income goes towards shelter.
Yeah,
it's too high. It stretches people very, very thin. But we are all about hope here on the show. Normally it's like, wait, The Economist is going to cheer me up. It's like, forget about it. But
you give us the raw data and the raw numbers, and we have to sit back and absorb them and kind of figure out, all right, is this going to work? How are we going to advance this? Right. I read your report this week or the end of last week, and I thought, yay, rah, rah. We're looking in the right direction.
There's hope, and I think that for us, that's really important, that we have to, have something to work towards and give people say, okay, it is turning. There are shifts in life. When we think about here in New York City, in the 70s, we were going broke. In the 80s, we had a serious drug and crime problem. We've had tech bubbles burst. We've had terrorist attacks. We've had natural disasters. We've had a financial crisis. We've had COVID. The city has always come back. So when people say, well, this is it, nonsense. There is a reason that so many people live here. And a lot of people that left during the pandemic have come back because they have missed it. But all right, so we have one more item on the lineup that is near and dear to Hannah's heart. So
59% of Gen Z women are confident that they will be financially ready for retirement. And as a Gen Z woman,
How you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty optimistic.
You should. You know, I think that, especially in your case, you know, you do a wonderful job here.
Thank you.
On the show and editing the line
Thank
each
you.
week. And I think there is, anytime you have serious issues, which we always seem to have, a time where there's political turmoil, wars going on, you know, still concerned about the pandemic and you know, the inflation that's been killing so much of our purchasing power. You got to be optimistic. Things are going to get. That was the American dream, right?
Yeah.
And we're not American dream the mall. You know, we've already besmirched that.
They've had way too many issues. So,
But really, so
boo to the American dream.
so now, when you talk to your friends, do you notice that the women are more confident about retirement than men? Because I didn't really necessarily see a reason for it. But of all the generations, it's the Gen Z women
That's the highest.
that are the most
54%
confident.
of millennials, 45 of Gen X, 52 of baby boomers. So it's the highest among Gen
Those were
Zers.
interesting stats, actually,
right?
when I saw
yeah.
that.
I don't know why. I think that optimism is a fickle thing. So sometimes you feel good, sometimes you don't feel so good. But I think that among my generation, we have no other choice but to be optimistic.
I think
have to keep
that is the
moving
way you have
forward.
to look at it. It's
I'm counting on you all.
Yeah, thank you.
Gen Z, trust me.
We're
changing the world.
yes.
me and Vince
For the
will
better.
be hanging out in a
Yeah,
beach
exactly.
somewhere, counting our residuals from the show,
Yeah.
and enjoying the pampered life of.
I'm seriously counting on Gen Z, trust me, for
Yeah.
a lot of reasons.
Well,
We don't want to let you down.
I gotta talk to my son about this though, because as a Gen Z male, he's gotta level this off, you know, a little bit.
Yeah, come on, Greg.
Yeah, get a
Well,
job.
I'm
Yeah,
sure
you're only
Daryl
in
Jenner
No,
knows
no.
school.
off
but
Yeah.
it's funny because I tell him that, you know, because he complains about how busy he is, and I'm like, when I was 16, I got home, got on a bus, went to a mall, worked at a Sam Goody till 10 o'clock at night, then came home and did my homework. I go, what is exactly you're doing? And then he walks away from me.
I've had a job since I was 16, and I was folding shirts at Hollister. So yeah.
Oh,
You know,
Yeah.
we pay our dues in a variety. It builds character, right? They used to always say
Yes,
that.
character building.
Plus, then you can be a grumpy old man like me and Vince, and go, when I was your age, you little whippersnapper,
But you know, but when
I
I-
sold
when-
cassettes.
I don't see Vince saying something like that. I think you might be speaking for yourself here. Don't drag Vince into that.
but
Come on, solidarity, man.
yeah, okay.
Okay, well, all right. So,
Okay.
since this is the last show of the year,
Yes,
and
it is.
again, everybody,
Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah.
happy everything, Happy New Year, everything
Yes.
that you're selling, celebrate it to the max because we want optimism. The end of the Jets season, whatever you're celebrating, you know, it's the old joke. What does Jets stand
My
for?
Jets.
Just end the season.
That's,
So let's just.
Oh, I didn't.
You never heard
is
that one
hilarious.
before?
Never heard that.
Oh, come on. Well, 25 years ago in the Jet games, you know those signs you see?
Just to end the season.
Just to end the season.
I don't think I've ever told you, but you know, I had a dog for 17 years who passed 4 years ago. Do you know what her name was?
Jet.
that's a great name.
Not because of the football team. Trust me. And she had 2 T's at the end of her name, but Jet.
Since we live to provide.
Like Joan Jett or the song Jet? Which
Yeah.
one?
Well, I'll tell you offline. I can't talk about it online.
Okay.
Where she actually
I
got
can't wait.
Where she got the name from.
I love it.
I think I
Yes.
know the answer to
I
this,
can't
but
wait.
I
You
won't tell.
probably do.
You know, it's funny because, you know, Bridget Moynihan has a child with Tom Brady, the ultimate Jet killer, and the kid's name is John Edward Thomas. Jet.
Yeah.
And, of course, it was a Jet, one of my favorite players, Mo Lewis, that knocked Drew Bledsoe out of a game and started the whole Tom Brady swing up his career.
Wow.
But anyhow, it's like, what's his face? Chipper Jones named one of his kids Shea because he did so well at Shea Stadium pounding the Mets. So
Okay.
what do
There's
we
that.
expect in 24? Well, Greg's going to turn 54 in February. Outside of that, but thank you. Well, you know,
54.
let's hope I
There you
get there.
go. Studio 54.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're catching up. So here's my general forecast in 5 minutes. And we've talked a lot about this stuff, so it's more of a summation. The economy is going to continue to cool. We're not going into recession this year. Yes, I was one of the people who said we'd be in recession by now, but I counted out the American consumer, and sometimes you lose making bets like that. The Fed, again, is going to start to bring down rates. I don't think till the second half of next year. Remember, whatever they do, it takes at least 6 months for it to start working. There's that lag time with monetary policy. I think that we can expect mortgage rates, 30-year mortgage rates, to continue to drift lower. Again, I think there is a possibility late next year they're below 6. But every little bit is going to help. And every time you hear a headline about rates going down, or hopefully you all read the line, we certainly like to broadcast that
I
for
do.
selfish reasons. Thank you.
do.
When rates go down, be on the phone. Call your agent, call your mortgage professional and say, hey, what's my payment look like now? Because every time that goes down, the home of your dreams becomes more affordable. Inventory, is not as big problem here in New York City as it is in other parts of the country, where they can actually rattle off the homes for sale without giving you a number in parts of Connecticut and even Palm Beach. By the way, hello to our offices in Connecticut, New Jersey, Palm Beach, and the Hamptons. I want to show them love too. That's part of the relief. And since new construction is not going to raise the inventory quick enough, we got to get that resale inventory pumping. So that will hopefully lead to a more affordable home buying environment. What are you looking for this year? Next year, sorry.
The end of this year will be just like it started. Very questionable, uncertain. I agree with your assessment, though, for 2024. I think the news recently about interest rates not going up again, being cut 3 or 4 times next year, is enough to get the consumer, the buyer out there, remotivated to do something. I think I also agree it probably won't take effect until probably mid next year. But it's a philosophical thing, psychological thing in this town with buyers. Give them some good news that they can hang on to. Don't change that news so quickly, and all of a sudden you'll see, people reacting. Same thing with sellers. I think we need more inventory. I think we'll see that by, second quarter of next year into third quarter, when rates are down enough, buyers are out there enough. And the supply and demand, situation that we are always in this town kind of levels off. So I think you're going to see a little more inventory, and I think you're going to see a lot more buyers out there. It's not going to be. We're also got to worry about an election year coming up.
Well, I was going to ask you about that because I did a REBNY panel last week, and I kind of laugh at the idea that people wait to see how the election comes out a lot of times.
Not that it makes a difference anyway.
Right. There are 2 choices. Right. So why you're going to go ahead anyway. But look, people, I guess there's always uncertainty in life. Yeah. But, remember, too, people go, well, how does real estate perform in an election year? It's not that simple of a question.
Right.
Because if you look at the last couple of big elections we've had in 2020, there's a pandemic raging. Right. In 2009, we have a financial crisis. The banking system's doomed. Yeah. In 2000, we are seeing a tech bubble burst, and we're in the recession. Yeah. Mm-hmm. In 92, we're coming off a president who broke a pledge in not raising taxes, and we're in the middle of a terrible recession. So these things don't happen in vacuums. I think the best advice is with any investment is to think long term. If you're in it, especially if if it's going to be your home, if you're planning on living there a while, the other stuff is just noise. Yeah. I bought my house in 2006. I couldn't have picked a worse time to do it in terms of, timing the market. Right. But you know what? It's been 17 years. I couldn't be happier. I love my neighbors. I love where I live. Beautiful Wantagh, Long Island.
And your neighbors love you.
They just ask me. I'll tell you that they love me. Again, last night accompanying
Jets, and then it's like,
it's if I ever did move, I'd want to take my neighbors with me. They're really good neighbors, and we have a lot of fun together. Plus, I have this gigging thing in Long Island. By the way, I had a great gig Saturday night. It's the best one I think I've had maybe ever. We had a lot of friends in the audience that came up to sing, and it was wild. It was really good. And that's the holidays. We did a lot of Christmas songs.
Nice. Mr. Numbers. Yeah. Right? Can you imagine?
Right. Who
leading an orchestra of friends and family.
I just play guitar, but yes, people do listen to us. Enough. We're like the Pied Piper of, whatever. So,
would you listen?
Do I have have a choice?
I would.
It's Ray's
good question,
solidarity. We're all in this together, right, Lena? We are all in
Yes,
this
we
together.
are.
That's right.
Yes, we are.
Well, I guess that's it. I see by the time we've run the longest show
Oh
yet,
dear.
but it is the
Is that my fault?
the year.
Yay.
And Hannah has an important message for our listeners
I
and
do.
watchers out there.
First of all, hello to our listeners, but make sure you like and subscribe, and to the More Network. We have a ton of great shows on there, just like Vince's. And
Yes, and we're adding more. This is the lineup.
It's an
is so
exciting
great.
lineup, I will say, and it's so nice because I've known him for a bunch of years. Not as well as recently, but known him for years, and it's great to have a little sidekick here.
Well,
to do
and-
the
we'd
same
love to have you
thing.
back on.
And I'm happy to say that I will be on your show this week
Yes, you will
for
tomorrow.
more senseless cross promotion. But I've been on Vince's show a lot of times. And Vince, what happens when I go on your show? How do those ratings look when I go on your show?
You're reading my mind. I was just looking at numbers this morning as I'm obsessed with numbers. His show is the #1 show so far this season.
Of course it is. I mean, is that
swear to
ever
you,
in doubt?
I'm telling you, every time I look at it, it's like, what? You put the name, the title, Economist View of the Marketplace.
No.
Boom.
2 words, Greg Heym. That's it.
Oh, Greg
you don't
Heym,
have to.
that's right.
Sure.
Special guest star Greg Heym. There we go.
Yeah.
Anytime
But it's true.
I'm doing a Zoom or something, we're always fighting about what to write. Just 2 words, Greg Heym. It's like Vince Rocco. You put Vince Rocco on the show, you have Vince Rocco. That's it. You say no
Well,
more.
tomorrow is my last show for the season until we come back, I think, January 9th. So he's on it. So we know that going into, 2 or 3 weeks out, his numbers are going to be up here. I'm counting on it, so get some rest tonight.
We're gonna have to.
Well, yeah, I have to do a Zoom like right after I leave the studio. Luckily, my door is right there.
Right. I was going to say
and-
your commute is like really easy.
Well, it's good. And, previously we were just considering ourselves show prep for you. But now that the ratings are getting there.
And just because of him, by the way, I'm starting my show a half an hour earlier tomorrow at 9:30 versus 10. It's a struggle, but, for the sake of ratings.
Lena's like, what? But, all right. So
Announcement. There you go.
that is it. We want to thank everybody
Yes.
that's been subscribing and listening and watching.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Great
We
show.
love
Happy
doing
holidays,
the show.
yeah.
Thanks to Vince for coming on. We knew you had to be the first guest, and
I'm
you're very
honored.
informative.
I'm
Look,
honored.
you've done your show for 10 years, right? You're the #1 show. You've talked to experts in every field, and you just bring a whole host of information and expertise to the
But only
show.
Mr. Numbers gets the numbers.
That is correct. I'm glad you mentioned that.
Plugged.
Wow.
And on that wonderful note, everybody have a great week. And again, happy holidays, and we'll see you in 2024. Thank you so much.